As a coach, if you were to ask some of your former players, let's just say all of them, I know there's a lot of them, to describe you in one word, what do you think they would say?
I hope they would say that I was very considerate of all of them. I hope they'd say that I loved them all, although there are many things they might have done that I didn't like. I'd hope they'd say that. But
consistency might be one word?
Yes, in spite of the fact that some say that consistency is the last refuge of those who have no imagination.
That's very good.
I think that you have to be consistent in so many ways.
In your first year as head coach at Indiana State, you and your team were invited to participate in the national tournament, but you refused to go. What happened?
Well, I had one a colored player on my team, and they were not permitted to play in it at that particular time, so I refused to accept the invitation to play in it, since he wasn't permitted to, even though he was probably on my traveling squad. He probably played the least amount of time of anyone on my team, but still, he was with us all the time, and he was a part of the team, and I wouldn't go without him.
What were the results, the fallout, the repercussions of that decision that you made?
The next year, the very next year, we were invited again, and this time they permitted him to come with some restrictions. He couldn't stay in the hotel where we were staying. He couldn't have his meals in the dining room, but he could have his meals in the hotel provided we had a private room. And I refused again, but I was beseeched by the NAACP and his parents and some others that it might be a breakthrough. And so I relented, and we went. He stayed with a colored minister and his wife, but was at the hotel for our meals, and we did have a private room. We had no problem with him. He was accepted. Of course, he didn't get to play very much. Had he been a star player, it might have been, I don't know that it would have been, but it could have been different. And we had more trouble on the way driving from Terre Haute to Kansas City, stopping in some places maybe to eat where they wouldn't let him come in and eat, so I wouldn't let anybody. We'd just go someplace else. And would not make any big deal of it. Say, I feel that, some bologna and crackers and cheese would be better anyway for all of us. So we go to get something else, and our other players would accept it. But anyway, I think it did serve as a breakthrough. People were right, and about a few years later, an all-colored team won the championship there.
How many years ago was that?
That was in 1948.
1948. That's the year I was born.
56 years ago.
Let's fast forward a couple of decades now, and we're in the era of the 60s and 70s. It was a tumultuous time, very confusing time for a lot of people, and you had some extremely strong-willed players. That's how I will describe it. How did you manage those times and those kinds of players?
Well, you have to change with the times. There's no question about that, but you can't change your basic philosophy. And for example, one great player, one of the greatest players I ever had, and one of the greatest playing the game, said I didn't have the right to determine whether or not he could wear a beard or a mustache or let his hair go extremely long. And I said, no, I don't have that right. I just have the right to determine who's going to play, and we're going to miss you. And
very subtle.
Yes,
very powerful.
And he got taken care of, and there was no problem. And he's often been interviewed. He's been asked, "Do you think Coach would have stood up for it?" And he said, "Well, I got taken care of, didn't I?" And so I think I tried to teach my players, for example, I'm not going to try to tell you what religion you should have or what your politics should be. Have something, believe in it. Have some reasons to stand up for it, but please stay open-minded. That's all I ask.
We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we will join legendary coach John Wooden to talk about some of the principles of leadership that have really shaped his life and the lives of so many people. We'll be right back.
Leadership Track is a leadership development resource for leaders who want to grow their leadership ability and influence. The primary focus of our resource menu is self-leadership. If you're ready for the adventure, log on to leadershiptrack.com. You'll find Leadership Track Televised, a 30-minute interview with successful leaders who share what they've learned on their leadership journey. Leadership FAQs, A brief missive that provides insight into a myriad of leadership topics like change, teamwork, and conflict resolution. Leadership Track is also available for on-site training and keynote events. Share the wealth of information with your entire team. Visit leadershiptrack.com today. Empowering leaders to live life on purpose.
Welcome back to Leadership Track. We're with legendary coach John Wooden. We're talking about some of the issues of leadership that formed his own life and the lives of so many other people. We're talking about his past, his teams, his presence, what his plans are for the future. Coach, thanks for being with us on the show. And one of the questions I wanted to ask you is this. You had a lot of stars on your team, but how did you handle that whole issue of being a star with regard to being a team player as well?
Well, my basic philosophy at the very beginning is that we're working this together, and I have in my pyramid team spirit, and that is to, realize that each individual must make the effort to be concerned about the team first. I want their individual abilities to be put to use for the welfare of the team, not for themselves. I once heard team spirit defined as in willingness to lose oneself in the group for the good of the group. And I used that but didn't like it particularly well. But finally, by changing one word, I changed the word willingness to eagerness. Sometimes we're willing to do something we really don't want to. If we don't want to do it, you're not going to have the enthusiasm necessary to execute your own particular level of competency. I changed that to an eagerness, and I thought it worked a little better. And the best method you have of controlling that is the bench. They all like to play, and if they don't work together as a group and playing two individuals, they put them on the bench, and they usually come around because they all like to play.
You've achieved so many levels of success as a coach by anyone's standards. So how would you, John Wooden, define success? Well,
I defined it in 1934 to try to help me become a better teacher. And I thought a lot of things about it, and I remembered what my father tried to teach about never trying to be better than somebody else, but always never cease trying to be the best you could be. And I remembered something that a high school professor had when we talked about success. And I ran across a very simple verse that said, "At God's footstool to confess, a poor soul knelt and bowed his head. I failed," he cried. "The Master said, thou didst thy best. That is success." And I believe that is true. And from those things, I define success in 1934 as peace of mind attained only through self-satisfaction in knowing you made the effort to do the best of which you're capable. And you're the only one who will know that.
How would you comment on the phrase that some people use where you have to give 110%?
I would say there's no way you can give 110%, and there's no such thing as an overachiever. No one ever did more than they're capable of doing, and 100% is perfection, so there's no way you can give 110%. And that's my feeling about it. And occasionally when I hear that, I sort of jokingly want to tell them, "Oh, now how do you really give 110%, or how can you do something you're not able to do?" So that's my feeling.